Okay, thank you very much. Just this is a question, and because why? You know, everywhere in the world you have these guys who really succeed in nearly every election. Trump as the main leader of the Western world, Meloni, Kickel with us in Austria, Wilders, Le Pen, and I think Abele Gesal, not able to spell him, all the right-wing populists. And the question is why? Why we are really so successful? And we think we could explain to some extent by demography. This is not too good news. So this is politics is really very high emotional. And if you talk a lot of moral. So the most important thing is, if you're talking about politics, that you make a step back. And like Plato, knowing yourself is the first of all sciences. And my most beloved philosopher, Baruch de Spinoza, he an Jewish Dutch philosopher, said really, I think, the most important thing. I have endeavored not to laud at human actions, not to weep, not to cry, not to hate, but to understand them. And I think this is most important in all behavioral anthropology, behavioral psychology, evolutionary psychology, to understand why we behave, and in this way, why we have politics in our genes. And I will show you later on, we have really our politics in our genes. Politics is very closely related to moral attitudes. In moral attitudes, every one of us thinks, oh, we have my moral attitude is very important for me, and I'm very free in my moral attitudes. This is not true. In fact, Jonathan Haidt, one of the famous moral psychologists in the world, said, with many studies, it's like sitting in Mahout, sitting on an elephant, and you see something, an elephant decides to go left or go right, and you afterwards talk and realize and think about why it's right to go left or to go to right. And imagine migration. If you see some male migrants, like we talked before with Ron, and someone would say, oh, these poor guys, I would have to help them. Oh, they're dangerous. We're really afraid of them. So this goes into milliseconds. Milliseconds we decide our moral issues, and we know that moral dimensions have a substantial genetic basis, about 60%. We have about 5 moral dimensions. It would bleed too far, but it's also like every trait, as moral attitudes have a very strong genetic basis. This is also true for political attitudes. This is a meta-study from 2012 and many others, but it's a really twin study, a meta-study of twins. You really see, if you look here, the overall political ideology. If you're liberal or conservative, is about 55% genetics. So if you're quarreling about left and right and Trump and Harris, we're quarreling also about our genetics. Interestingly, if you see this political party identification was before 2012, mostly influenced by the family environment. Meanwhile, I know the data from Peter Hatemi, who makes a new study, we shifted. It gets much more genetics, because if a society is polarized, people go more close to their genetic base position. So you see, in fact, also our political attitudes, our moral attitudes have really a strong genetic basis. If you go, and our questions was really to look, is there some evolutionary background of political moral attitudes? Presumably, yes. If you go into World Value Survey, where there are 150,000 average individuals aged over 40, you really find, if you exclude the developing countries, only the developing countries, you find this pattern. The extreme on the left and the extreme on the right have more children. So we think this is some kind of balancing selection. Some kind of balancing selection, both are kept in the population, and it's not really balanced, but in fact, it's nearly balanced. But if you really, and we think it's a selection for extreme. The extreme left and the extreme right has most of the children. If you go further and to go to Europe, you see this picture, really totally shift. This is the shared data sets, the survey of health, aging, and retirement in Europe, about 65,000 individuals in 15 European countries, and you really find only advantage in mean children for the right-wing. Just totally, the right-wing people have more children than the left-wing people, and this really very strong effect. So you can imagine what this will mean for the future. If political attitude is also genetics, you can imagine that we will shift in the future. But thinking about why did this evolve, coming back to evolution, we don't know really why it evolved. But we know a left-wing orientation, being liberal, is associated with more open attitude, a right-wing orientation. Being conservative is associated with a more closed attitude. And interesting, both are strongly correlated with xenophilia and xenophobia. As you know, xenophilia and xenophobia, if you're open to strangers, is about 40%, 30 to 40%, or genetic background, and both are correlated. So this is for sure not the only reason, but also the stranger, the others. And both have a genetic background and a genetic correlation of about 0.5, which means the same pleiotropy, the same genes influencing political attitudes, also influence our attitude towards strangers, to migrants and so on. It's for sure not the only reason, for sure not. We may have also other reasons. Sum up, this is what's in the line with Ron, it's perfect line with Ron. The benefits of xenophobia and xenophilia. We made a study 5 years ago with behavioral geneticist Nick Martin in Brisbane, and showing that if someone has really a very xenophobic attitude, is really very xenophobic, he or she has long runs of homozygosity, really indicating over generations maybe some inbreeding. So if you get too xenophobic, you have a high probability of becoming very inbred. This is really dangerous to know from intelligence, from general cognitive ability, for reproduction, for everything. It's a risk. So you need also in a population, in our small groups, maybe let's say 150 individuals in our small groups, in our tribal societies, who make really contact with other tribes to marry outside. And these are presumably young women, because in all we have a system of female dispersal, and young women went really out of their own tribes and went to other tribes. And we know from many data in modern societies, young women, in fact, are the most xenophilic individuals at all. On the other side, like Ron showed perfectly, you need also to have xenophobic individuals, because very often encounters between different groups could have been dangerous, could have been lethal, particularly for a man. And you see very well from Laocoon in the Odyssey, in the Trojan War, Timeo, Danaeus, et Donopharentes. I really fear the Greeks even will bring some presents. So we have also literature with xenophobic element, and we think that both have a balancing, both have been necessary. This is only one point, maybe what's political orientation, which has to be investigated. Also novelty seeking, social justice, very important, sexual moral. It's really different between left and right wing. You know the discussion about LGBTQ, yes, no, LGBTQ, and so on. This is very strong. Against LGBTQ is very strong right wing moral. Pro LGBTQ is very strong left wing moral. Authority and submission. Right wing people tend more to respect authority, really like authority. Left wing people, on the other hand, really want to avoid tyranny. Really afraid of tyranny, and also religion and spirituality. But spirituality and religion may unify both political attitudes. So we are in the beginning, and also colleagues of us in the States, are in the beginning really to figure out what is going on and what is really the selection pressure really leading to our political orientation. But as I said before, in not developed countries, you really find a picture that both sides, some balancing selection, both sides have, both extremes have most children. And this is also different in the States. This is the only data we have, the General Social Survey of the United States, and really find from 1972 until 1989, the left wing had more children. And this changed dramatically. Also like European pattern, with a several thousand data sets, I think about 100,000 data sets or data point individuals, and really see a changing in the pattern. A changing that from left-wing advantage did really change to a very strong right-wing advantage. And presumably by 1968, the revolution or student revolution, maybe it's also to do with demography. Maybe, we don't know. But the bad thing is we don't have any data more. We only have data for the States, and I'm not able to go more back in data in time because this had not been surveyed, political orientation. Very interesting, a paper published in PNAS, completely independent of us, from Vogel and Fieder in 2022, and really showed that the differential fertility from 2004 until 2018 made the society more, American society, more conservative, and it increased from this time from 2004 to 2080, maybe from 3 to 4%, being against opposite to gay marriages and being opposed to abortion. So we really, with the first article, we only showed that the maybe selection, Vogel and Fries had been the first who had been able to show there's really a shift in attitudes that really may influence like the election of Trump, in fact. If you go further, we found the same for Europe, which has been published. It was very hard to publish this article, you can imagine, but we found it on the also shared data set on the gender and generation survey. It was the pattern that I showed you before. 4 generations, which means we have F0 generation, which is siblings in political orientation. F1 generation are the children, and F2 generation are the grandchildren. And you really show in the upper, in the positive values, the red bars are indicating the difference in grandchildren between right-wing individuals and left-wing individuals. And you really see, with exception of Israel is particularly interesting, but Israel is very getting through migration, very conservative. I think Israel is meanwhile pro-migration on the top of what could be not more conservative, in fact, from a strong migration of very Orthodox people. And other countries, nearly other countries, only Czech Republic, really there's also a big advantage in the F2 and the 3 generation, F1 and the F2 generation for the more conservative individuals. And the conservative individuals have meanwhile 1.5 grandchildren more. And this is the same, we made the same also with same-sex marriage in the gender and generation survey, we find just the same. So the trend you're really seeing maybe is really rooted in the demography. It's not able to explain everything, but maybe a lot of things. And this is maybe we call it meanwhile the right shift. And this is the advantage of both sides of the political spectrum, left and right, did really change from a reproductive advantage for the right only. And also in Europe, and as we know, it's about 70% of the children they're not clones of their parents, but about 70% of the children are close in political orientation of their parents. So you can imagine if the conservative people have more children, there will be more conservative individuals, like Vogel and Fries just said it. On the other hand, we have additional forces of social disruption. Silva told it, also Rosemary yesterday. If you look at data, this is census data from the States, from birth year 1890 until birth year 1975. All census data about 7 million, 3 million or 3.5 million men, 3.5 million women. And we looked how much is invariance explained on ever been married through income. In females, what we expect, the female born in the cohort 1890 have about 4% remain never married, but virtually 1970, there's no effect at all. So having a high income is no problem for a woman to find a man. More men seems not to have a problem to marry a woman of high income. But on the other hand, and this is very striking, if you have the same for men, you really see the variance explained in ever being married goes really high up, and really indicating that in 1890 it plays no role the income for finding a woman. But in 1975, about 20%, or we know from newer data, it rises up in the States about 25 to 30%. So the most important mate selection criteria for female in men is income. And we think on this time in the beginning of the 19th century and the 20th century, there were different status indicator, maybe bodily strength, body size, having a countryside, whatever. And this everything converges to income. Income becomes the most important source of everything to choose, to choose for men. And we think there's a strong selection for income and all genetic predisposition that are related to income. This is really a highly disruptive force. If you look at this, this is also the individuals in the United States ever been married. And you see, of course, people are to less extent marrying. This is no surprise. But the curve, this red curve is of women, the blue curve are the men, and really they disappear just simply by the effect that the women marry a man who has already a relationship, maybe have kids, before they marry a man with low income. And this goes really out, and this may also explain why the poorest group in the United States are not female, are not black female, but black men. Black men is the poorest group in the United States, and most poor with nothing. We have really high death rate, high criminal rate, high drug abuse, and so on. And maybe this explains to some extent why they also vote for Trump, because we're really frustrated. I don't know how to solve this problem. If it's possible to solve this problem, you never can really put people and women to choose different. Maybe we should not only think on female advancement. We should really think what to do with this poor man. Yeah, that's core. Obviously, look always over poor. We have to with high status men. You compare high status men with average women, but you forget the low status men. You completely forget them. They're really being invisible, and in elections, they're invisible in a moment. And the same holds true for Europe. Just the same. If you go to tensor data, EPUM data, you really found the same curves. The same curves go to Austria, France. France is to less extent Greece, Spain, Poland, and so on. Which both curves have never been married, went away. And if you have cohabitation data is not so good and not so many, but it's just the same data of cohabitation. So both effects, a right shift due to demography, to more kids for the right-wing people, as well as really that many young men have no chance and remain without marriage and get very frustrated. These two forces, it's not alone. Of course, you have migration, you have everything that really disturbs the society. But we think, and also Vogel and Friese, that this is really a big issue for long-term demographic trends. So almost my last slide, demographic trends maybe explain political trends. Demographic developments maybe really explain political trends, in fact. So it's the same like maybe in the United States. So we have to think, but we have to assume, I think, that our society shifts from left liberal to right conservative. This is maybe for someone which sounds really bad, but the thing is that most people are close to the middle. So if it could be a shift, of course, all political parties, and I don't think that Trump will longer exist, but all political parties will shift to the very, very slowly to the right. Think on Harris. Harris talked, she has a clock, and she never mentioned that she is a black female or a dark skin female. She never mentioned it because recognized, because with identity politics, we wouldn't make any votings. And I think we will experience next years. Trump is extreme, it's disturbing, but I think the next years we will experience in all Western societies a small, short drift to the right due to demography. So future perspectives. We don't. This is a silly Zoom. We really assume that there's a selection of political attitudes, but to really figure it out, we need integration of political sciences, evolution and behavior, and molecular statistical genetics. And the old question of Jonathan Haidt, the very famous question, why good people are divided by politics? I think it's very important, and this is a really central question to avoid this really dangerous polarization. Polarization is really very dangerous, because you have some kind, would say, left liberal thinking or overall publicity, and you have a right shift in the population. And these things don't come together. Okay, thank you.